Hi everyone, here's another video from the Season 5 PTR. This time I want to talk about the Sorg, in particular the new unique stuff Vox Omnium. I found this to be one of the more interesting items that were introduced in this patch, and I talked about this originally in a pre-PTR video where I was freer crafting about the viability of this item and what it could potentially do. Now it turns out my prediction was perfectly accurate because you see me here kind of like struggling my way through a tier 70 pit, as expected from sorcerers these days, I guess. I mean, there are way better builds out there for the Zorgs. In fact, even some that can farm 100 plus pretty reliably, but this is not one of them. But this is just what I came up with, and I want to discuss again this item because I really like the design of it. I just think it's extremely undertuned and it would need a bit more support, maybe with other, helpful legendary aspects or something like that. So originally I was talking about what this item can do and how it could potentially be used either as a support item, where, for example, it can trigger those frost balls, or it can trigger the sparks for their buffs, or even the firebolt for the burn, for example. A lot of Sorg builds actually run with burning, for example, from firebolt enchantment, and potentially it could free up an enchantment slot here. But ultimately, this item seems to be designed to be a kind of basic attack build, because it also buffs the damage of set basic attacks, and it directly competes with, for example, putting a Moonrise aspect on your two-handed weapon, or for example using the new Shard of Erathiel, which is a very powerful basic attack item that basically all of the other basic attack builds are using. But here you have the added benefit of also casting other skills while casting your basic attacks. So you can benefit from some extra little perks. For example, what I was doing here in this clip that you're seeing is me spamming charged bolts to apply for example, shock effects, and also the damage reduction from charged bolts. So I was kind of like spamming into the pack, and I was running Pain Gorgers in this setup. I mean, Pain Gorgers is a very powerful basic attack tool. You want to try to apply this debuff to all enemies on the screen whenever you can, whenever you play a basic attack build, unless it specifically doesn't work with it. Let's say, for example, Firebolt already has its own glove, so you can't use Pain Gorgers. But for most basic attack builds, it's important that you hit enemies every 3 seconds with something that is not a basic skill. And you do this very naturally by just spamming charged bolts. So there's a really good synergy here. And I wanted to explore this with a Frostbolt build, because this is really what I kind of understood would be the main synergy that would go with Vox Omnium. Spark is a skill that hits multiple times, and for example, Pain Gorgers only replicates the first instance of a hit. So when you hit like 4 times with Spark, then only the first hit is replicated, and it will not really do any significant damage. On top of this, we have Firebolt that works with the Vox Omnium stuff, and that already has its own build, so it doesn't need the stuff. In fact, it doesn't even work with, for example, the Flameweaver Glove, where you split the Firebolt into multiple. So I've actually tried this, and as expected, that wasn't even interacting. So this basically only leaves us with the option to play a Frostbolt DPS build, spamming a certain core skill and trying to deal damage with this. And I think this is the intention that was behind this. At least it seems to be like the most obvious synergy that would come to mind. This is what I discussed in my video before the PTR, and that's pretty much exactly what I concluded after I played it as well. So this is what you see in action here. Now the problem is that this stuff is just like terribly undertuned, because Frostbolt doesn't really start anywhere. Like, there is no Frostbolt build. I've never heard of anyone trying to deal damage with Frostbolt. And I did some math on this, and I concluded that with the Vox Omnium in like a really good scenario, you'd maybe come out a little bit on top of what is currently possible on the Season 4 live servers. And if you're talking about Season 4 live servers, we're talking about Sorgs being the weakest class, and Frostbolt, nowhere to be found as a build. So just buffing that Frostbolt build that doesn't exist by a little bit doesn't really cut it, basically. So in the end, this is just extremely weak, and it could probably be better by just equipping a Shard of Erathiel, equipping a Starless Skies ring, and equipping a Crown of Lucion, and I could probably do a much better Sorg build with a Frostbolt DPS skill, basically, than whatever is possible with Vox Omnium. Considering that this is a class-specific unique, and Shard of Erathiel works for every single class in the game now because everyone can use swords, it seems kind of odd to me that this is so weak. I'm not sure what is happening here, but I think also it's just kind of like a factor of Frostbolt not really having any other support. There's no legendary aspect for it, like at least directly. There are, for example, rapid aspect or so if you talk about basic attack aspects or Moonrise adaptability. So yeah, these are kind of powerful effects here, but realistically, yeah, there is not really much that goes with this. And Frostbolt, again, doesn't really start from anywhere. So there needs to be a lot of extra power added to this if we ever want to see any kind of viable choice here for Vox Omnium. On top of this, you have the same old problems here. For example, when it comes to boss damage, you see this. This is just a typical Sorc disease, same as the rogues. You can only really do any kind of damage during a stagger phase on the boss. And if you have any kind of long boss fight or you can't stagger them, well, you're not really gonna have a good time. So I think there could definitely be like a bit of like a general class redesign here to reduce the reliance on stagger, or maybe a stagger redesign, that wouldn't hurt either. And when it comes to this item in particular, yeah, it's just that doesn't really have a purpose, I think. This is kind of like a dead on arrival item, if you ask me. It's really cool, but it's just so weak. And I think even if they add another 0 to this item on the damaging effect, like it says that the basic attacks deal like plus 90% damage, even if that was 900%, it would still not really go anywhere, because it's just like lacking so much support in order to make something like Frostbolt viable. So maybe we don't really see like a solution to this just yet. Maybe this is going to be the item. It could maybe receive a bit of a buff, and the devs could, you know, think about what they could do or rework, or maybe add in the future to, you know, for example, elevate Frostbolt or even Spark. You know, if this could be a Spark thing as well. You know, Firebolt has its own build. Why not have a Frostbolt build or a Spark build? You know, that would be kind of cool. Expand the options a little bit. But we're very far away from that, so that's kind of my conclusion here. If you have done anything else with this stuff on the PTR, I'll be quite curious to hear it, but I couldn't really find any other real synergies, because using those basic attacks as just a support tool while losing your two-handed staff that doesn't really give you much, yeah, that really didn't seem worth it. So the only real scenario here was making a DPS build out of something like Frostbolt, and yeah, that was the result. So pretty terrible, to say the least. In any case, I hope you enjoyed my review here. I'm gonna have more stuff. There is actually some light at the end of the tunnel for the Sorcs as well. And I personally also expect some pretty major buffs to the Sorcs in the final patch notes, because everyone is complaining that they're kind of weak. And I do agree with that. And I have been giving feedback about not just this and other things as well on the Sorc. And I definitely think that something is happening there. So for now, that's what I got here. Stay tuned for more videos on my PTR experiences, and see you guys next time.